was lost, but now am found. Was blind, but now I see. 'Twas grace that taught my heart to fear, and grace my fears relieved. How precious did that grace appear the hour I first believed. Through many dangers, toils, and snares, I have already come. 'Tis grace hath brought me safe thus far, and grace will lead me home. My chains are gone, I've been set free. My God, my Savior is ransomed me. My chains are gone, I've been set free. My God, my Savior is ransomed me. And like a flood, His mercy reigns, unending love, amazing grace, unending love, amazing been there 10,000 years, bright shining as the sun. We've
Well, we have such a treasure today. Kjeell has been a friend of Navigating Motherhood for, I don't know, 50 years. No, just kidding. She's not that old. Yeah, because anyway, she's been a friend of Navigating Motherhood since we started Navigating Motherhood. And she is just such a plethora of just joyful parenting and biblical wisdom. And she's just got just so much to share and so much to teach us this morning. But she's been married to her husband, Billy, for 30 years this fall. So that's a nice land.
Thank you.
Yeah, landmark, not a landmark, but not even a hurdle. That's a terrible thing to say.
Milestone.
Milestone. There we go. And they have 2 kids. They're college age, and so she's pretty much empty nesting. And she works hard. She's a consultant. She works kind of at the executive level in just with different companies. She has her own business. But when she has time to do whatever she wants, she and her husband like to travel. So they either go to see her family in Cape Cod or his family in Sweden. So isn't that fun? We want to come with you.
You're
to see-
welcome.
we want to meet your whole family.
Well, you already know them, Tana.
Not the Cape Cod in Sweden.
Oh, then
people,
you gotta.
though.
All
Yeah.
right, then you gotta come over there.
All right. So welcome, Kate, and get ready
sweet.
to fill up your tool chest with some good stuff. Thanks, Kate.
Thank you. Well, it's great to be here, and I do love you navigating motherhood moms. I'm not sure if 50 years is the the right amount of time I've been involved, but let's say that number has a familiar ring to me. So as Tana said, I have 2 children. I am grateful for them both, but they are so different, right? If you're a mom of multiple kids, you know, like each child is so unique. So our first child was born, and he was easygoing, compliant. You know, you give him a little stink eye or a firm voice, and he would go scuttling off to whatever I needed him to do. And then our second child was born, and she came into the world on her own terms, and she has been doing that ever since. You know, it's funny, when we had that first child, we thought, we got this parenting thing wired, like, oh, we got this down. And then our second one's born, we're like, oh yeah, we don't know anything. So she's our strong-willed child. I like to say our spirited child. And how many of you have a spirited child in your household? Yeah, see, right. The few, the proud, the not so few, right? Well, all children can be spirited children at one point or another, right? Some are just more so than others. Our spirited child is Katrine, our daughter, second child, and I love her dearly. And I cleared all these stories with her. I ran them by her. She was like, yeah, you can share those. We joked that she should record a message that said, my name is Katrine Kjeell, and I approve this message. But one of my favorite memories of her was she was maybe around 3 years old, and it was always a battle about dressing her and what was she going to wear, what I wanted her to wear, back and forth. So when she started to dress herself, I was kind of excited about that. So she came down one morning, and she had dressed herself, and I was, you know, wow, that's so great. She was wearing an interesting outfit. I think it was a pair of pants, and then like a skirt pulled over, and then a top, and the pants were plaid, and the skirt was striped, and the top was flowered, and it just, you know, was just that classic kid outfit. And so I looked at her, and I said, don't you look beautiful? She looked directly at me and said, Mom, don't say beautiful, say rock star. Yes, because living with a spirited child can feel like living with a rock star, right? There's the demands, the attitude, the my way or the highway. It can feel like living with a diva. And my husband and I have lived through that. There's a saying that says, it's good to learn from your mistakes, but it's better to learn from somebody else's mistakes, and it's best to learn from somebody else's successes. So I would like to share our frequent mistakes and our occasional successes about raising a strong-willed child. And my hope is that it'll help you reframe how you think of your child, how you parent, and ultimately what you rely on. So starting with, what do we mean when we say a strong-willed child? And if you think of a scale between willful defiance on one end and compliance on the other end, most kids kind of naturally fall on one end of the scale or the other. Right? Willful defiance, that's the kind of the pushback you get, the opposition, or the compliance is more the easygoing nature. And kids are wired one way or the other. Research shows that it doesn't have anything to do with birth order, right? You might think that maybe the older children are like that, drivers, or the younger kids are like that, more spoiled. Research says that the only correlating factor they can find of what causes spirited or strong-willed children is the temperament of the parents. All right, so if you have a strong-willed child, you can look at yourself or look at your husband and be like, thank you for that. But there is a natural human tendency to defy authority, right? You know, you're not the boss of me. We've probably said that ourselves. Our kids have said that. You know, your siblings, your brothers and sisters, your other kids have probably said that. We want to have things our way. But the problem is that authority exists, right? And our kids need to understand that. And it's not just in our homes. And when they get into school, the teacher is the authority. The workplace, the boss is the authority. If you're a citizen here in our country, right, you've got the police, you've got the government. Ultimately, God is our authority. So authority exists, and we need to teach our kids to respect authority. It's for their own safety. It's for their happiness. It's for their spiritual well-being. Now, Katrine was domineering with her peers. When she would play with her friends, she would always want to set the rules. She would want to pick the game. She would want to enforce the rules. And that created a lot of friction with her friends, right? Some struggles. And one day, a friend of mine said, boy, Katrine is going to be a great leader one day. And I was like, whoa, these traits that were driving me crazy, that I was trying to stomp out of her, were actually blessings. Yeah, there were battles, but they were blessings. And it kind of helped me rethink about the traits that a strong-willed child might have. So point one in your outline, I want to start to gratefully recognize the blessings. Starting out, just reframing how we think a little bit, because there are blessings about having a strong-willed child. And sometimes it might not feel that way. You're in the trenches, kind of grinding it out day in, day out. I totally get that. I can remember it felt like from the morning she woke up to the last time she went into bed, we were back and forth constantly. But yeah, when you look at those traits, those are gifts to be shaped rather than problems to be crushed. We need to reframe our thinking. Just even with that sort of more demanding or what's called bossy spirit, if rightly channeled, that can be a great leadership capability. Or stubbornness, determination, like the kid that doesn't want to leave the park until they finish climbing the rock wall. Well, that can lead to persistence, right? Wanting to achieve goals in life. That's a good thing. We want to rightly shape these gifts. Conviction, right? That kid that's constantly harping, you promised, that's not fair. That can lead to a child or a young adult that's steadfast in their beliefs, right? That has fortitude, that's standing for what's right. Or that kid that's passionate, sitting on the floor playing Legos for hours and hours on end. That kid is going to fulfill their pursuits, right? Be it motherhood or hobbies or careers. Or the kid that's got that energy and enthusiasm bouncing off the wall. Yeah, that's hard on a day when you kind of want to just chill out and watch a little TV. But imagine how that energy and enthusiasm channeled rightly could be a blessing for their future life, for their careers as a teacher, a public speaker, an entrepreneur. So we need to think about these traits as gifts to be shaped. And I know that might sound silly or, oh, it's just semantics, but for me, it really helped in reframing the blessing of having a strong-willed child. Franklin Delano Roosevelt was reportedly a strong-willed child, and one time his mother was chastising him because apparently he didn't play well with his friends and he wanted to always win and like to set the rules. And he was quoted as saying, "Mommy, if I didn't give the orders, nothing would happen." And you know what? I kind of get that, right? That strong-willed, personality gets things done. Now, we want our child to be a blessing to others. We want our child to be kind to others. But strong-willed children have grown up to be exceptional adults, and they've done wonderful, amazing things for society. So we need to reframe our thinking. Now, if you have a strong-willed child, you're not alone. I know sometimes it feels like so draining, but look around the room. So many of us are going through this together. We need to support each other. And you have support systems in your home, hopefully. Enlist your husband, or perhaps your grandparents, your parents live nearby. Enlist those people. If they're not geographically close, or maybe they're not philosophically aligned with your parenting, adopt a grandparent. There's so many wonderful women just in this room alone that I know would love to pour into your lives or in our church. So there is help, there are resources when it feels overwhelming. But strong-willed children are a blessing. Any children are a blessing, but strong-willed children are certainly a blessing. But that doesn't mean that we should just sit back and be like, all right, well, you know what? They're strong-willed, what can you do? we need to consistently address the challenges of having a strong-willed child. So I want to consistently address the challenges, and so I've got some subpoints on this point to give you some ideas of things that you can do to address the challenges. You need to equip yourself with knowledge. There's a lot of books out there, a lot of information that you can read, and certainly starting with the book, above all books, the Bible is a great resource, we know that. A lot of my teaching came from a book called The Strong-Willed Child by Dr. James Dobson. Maybe you've read that or you're familiar with that book. But we need to educate ourselves. And Dobson frames this in two ways, and I have subletter A and subletter B. So we want to look at, first, shaping the will. We want to shape the will of our child. And you've got 3 subpoints under this one. So the will is that deeply ingrained desire to have things our own way, right? That passion for independence. And we all have it. And we have it at differing degrees at different times in our lives. My daughter, Katrine, has a strong will. And when she was 2 years old, that will was steely. And one day we were heading off to church, and in our car, her car seat was behind me. Usually I drove, right? Her car seat was behind me, and her brother's booster seat was next to her in the back seat. Now, back in the day, I hope it's not this way, getting that car seat into the car was like, you didn't move that thing. Once that was in there, you had to screw it into the car, the frame of the car, you had to get the seatbelt in there. That was fixed. So we go out, get into the car, I put her in her car seat, her brother hops in the booster seat, and then I walk around to the passenger seat because my husband's gonna drive. And it's like literally 5 or 10 minutes down to church. Oh, no, she doesn't like that. She wants to sit behind me, and she wants me to drive the car. And you know what? A 2-year-old doesn't decide who drives the car, right? No. But she is so dug in on this that by the time we get to church, it feels, like an hour, even though it's about 5 minutes. We're in the church parking lot. She's a hot mess. And then she doesn't want my husband to open the car door and get her out. She wants me to walk around and get her out of her car seat. And my husband's like, no. And you're going to stay in your car seat, in the car, in the parking lot, until you let me open the door, and I'll take you out. So I go into church. I bring my son into church. I sit there. I'm waiting. Literally a half an hour later, he comes in like, all right, it is done. It's that steely will that we need to shape. So how are we going to do that? Well, point 1, under sub-point 1, I should say, is pick your battles. You need to decide, what is it that I want to enforce? What are my non-negotiables? And oftentimes that falls down on the sort of moral versus non-moral issues, because we want to aim at our kids' heart. So the things that we cared about was respect, honesty, and not hurting others. And those were the 3 things that we agreed that we were going to discipline on. So that story in the parking lot, that was clearly a respect issue in our minds. So we need to teach our kids how to respect authority from when they're young. Right? A 6-month-old can be taught how to respect authority. Those of you who have 6-month-olds, oh yeah, they can be defiant, right? A firm voice, letting them know that you're the boss is a good thing. But then we also need to distinguish between what is willful defiance and what is childish irresponsibility, right? Because we don't want to punish children for necessarily just being irresponsible. We want to punish them for being defiant. So when I think about that, I think about a kid running in the house with a cup. A kid running in the house with a cup trips and falls. All right, that is childish irresponsibility in my book. A kid running in the house, I say, don't run in the house. They look at me, they continue running in the house, and they trip and fall. I say that's willful defiance. So we need to make sure that we are clear about, what is it that we want to, what battles do we want to pick? And then after that, we want to define our boundaries. Right? When we decide what it is that are our non-negotiables, then we need to enforce those, and we need to let our kids know. These are the things that we care about, and this is how we're going to enforce them. But be reasonable. Right? We don't want to set impossible demands. A 2-year-old can't sit quietly in church with their hands in their lap for an hour and a half with nothing else to do and not make a peep. That's just not going to happen. Or a child that's struggling academically, that's incapable of academic success. We need to be reasonable in what we define as our boundaries. We also need to avoid power struggles where possible, right? Head them off at the pass. As I said before, oftentimes with Katrina, it was about what to wear. That was a power struggle. So we started setting out her clothes ahead the night before. We'd lay them out on the bed, and that seemed to work a lot smoother for the most part. Of course, when she went to a school where there was a uniform dress code, that was even smoother. But to just avoid, just to know where are those flashpoints and try and avoid them. And a routine can help, right? When your child knows what to expect, when they know what the cadence of the day is going to be, that often helps. And then step back and look for trends, right? Are there triggers? Are there things that are happening that are causing these power struggles? Are they hungry? Are they tired? Are there changes in the family dynamic? Is there a new sibling? Is there a change to the routine? Look at those things and try and figure out what is it that's causing these power struggles. And then lastly, reassure and teach after confrontation. Reassure and teach. Our job is to correct and direct our kids. So we certainly want to correct, but then we also want to direct. We want to show them, hey, this is what you did. That wasn't right. This is why you got your consequence. This is what I hope to see in the future. But I love you, and I know you can do it, and I'm for you. So we want to correct and direct. If you think about two parenting styles, one might be permissive, right, on this end of the scope, and the other would be authoritarian. Right? Permissive is like I let everything go, it's like I'm super slack. And authoritarian is like I'm hard line, every single infringement, command and control. We want to have a balance of love and control. Love and control. So reassure and teach after confrontation. That's how we shape the will. But when we shape the will, we also want to protect the spirit. Right? Because strong-willed kids have delicate spirits, right? If the will is made of steel and it needs to be shaped, the spirit is delicate. It's fragile. We need to handle it with care. We need to protect it. Strong-willed kids have soft hearts. And my daughter, Katrine, was no exception. She was extremely attached to me. So whenever she would go off to school, there was a lot of tears and crying. And if I was working in the classroom of her brother's classroom and she saw me on the school campus, that was a disaster. And then the whole cycle would start over again and crying. So someone suggested a book called The Kissing Hand. And it's a super sweet book, The Kissing Hand, about a mother raccoon that's sending her baby raccoon off to school, and she puts a kiss in his hand to keep that the baby raccoon would know that mom loves you. So we started incorporating this in our goodbye routine. So of course there was the hug and the kiss goodbye, but then there was the kissing hand as part of that. And then it became the hug, the kiss, the kissing hand, and the I love you sign. And then it was the hug, the kiss, the kissing hand, the I love you. There was a few other steps. We had this full-on, secret handshake goodbye. It lasted for a couple minutes. But just to say that, our spirited kids can sometimes wear us down, but yet they have such soft hearts. So here's a few subpoints on how we protect the spirit. First is watch your words. Watch your words. Because once said, words are hard to take back. And that frustration and that exasperation that we can feel when we have a spirited kid, we need to control that, right? And we're going to blow it. You just know that, right? So apologize when you've lost your cool, when you've said something you shouldn't. And as part of watching our words, we don't want to nag. Sometimes we can think that nagging is nice because we're not enforcing discipline. It's not nice, actually. It's spirit crushing. So calmly enforce your consequences. Don't nag. That constant stop, don't, no. Nobody likes that. So be calm, enforce your consequences, and then affirm your child. Cheer on obedience. Catch them doing things right. As parents, I think we often feel like we praise our kids a lot versus criticism. And a study shows that. A 2017 study in the Journal of Pediatric Medicine said that parents oftentimes feel they praise often and they criticize rarely. But yet when they evaluated parents and recorded their statements, that they actually criticized 3 times more than they praised. So I'm not saying that we should overpraise our kids, because that can certainly be a temptation, that everything Johnny does is amazing and oh, aren't you so wonderful? But yet I think to have an awareness of that balance and that we might feel like we are praising more than we actually are, And when our kids are young, it's easy to criticize because we're trying to shape them and direct them and correct them, but we can constantly be picking at them. So we need to just have that awareness in the back of our head that we want to have that balance of praise and criticism. In addition to watching our words, we want to not humiliate our child, right? Don't humiliate. It's important to show them to respect and to guard their reputations. Where possible, give your child a heads up, a warning. Hey, we're going to be leaving in 5 minutes. Letting you know, right? That's just something that, a common courtesy. People like to know, I need to be shifting gears, right? I need to be getting ready. Don't just, if possible, don't put it out there on a dime. We're leaving now. And don't discipline in public. Protect your child's reputation. Take them aside. Take them into the car. Take them into the restroom. Take them into the other room. Don't discipline in front of other siblings. There's that sort of gleefulness when, one sibling is getting in trouble and all the others are like, watching, like, well, what did you do? What happened? Try and protect their reputation where possible. And don't compare your child. It's so tempting when you have a spirited child to look at your friend and their kids are sitting quietly and nicely and you're all like, oh, why can't my kid be like that? Or say like, why can't you be like your sister? Don't compare your children. That's spirit crushing to them. And where possible, give them managed choices. Everybody likes choices. A child should have a few choices that they can pick from. Do you want to wear pants or a skirt today? Do you want to have peas or carrots with your dinner? Do you want to watch this show or that show? So give them managed choices. Lastly, subpoint 3 is check your emotions. As we look to address these challenges, the biggest challenge is sometimes our own emotions. And getting a handle on our own feelings, our own frustration, our own irritation. That can be one of the greatest problems of all. And the Bible has something to say about family dynamics. In Ephesians chapter 6, it says, children, obey your parents in the Lord, for this is right. This is Ephesians 6:1. I used to say to my kids, there is a verse in the Bible directed directly at you. It says, children, obey your parents. And they're right. That's absolutely right. But a couple verses down, Ephesians chapter 6, verse 4, it says, fathers, do not provoke your children to anger, but bring them up in the discipline and instruction of the Lord. Right, so parents have a responsibility not to provoke our children to anger, to purposefully stir them up. That's what provoke means, to anger them, to enrage them, to exasperate them. We need to keep our own emotions in check because we are to be that calm, safe place, that calming presence that help our kids feel safe. So now this is not a checklist that if you do everything right, like a recipe, it's going to come out this beautiful cake. No, there's no guaranteed outcomes. So ultimately, what we need to do is to trust God for the outcome. Ultimately, trust God for the outcome. We want to do the best we can. We do not want to abdicate our responsibilities. We have responsibilities as parents, right? God has gifted these kids to us. But applying these tips perfectly does not assure a perfect outcome. I was talking with a friend about what wisdom would I want to impart to moms that now we're down the road a little ways, and she and I talked about it, and she felt like she was so fixated on the 10-step program, or in our case, it's the 6 to 8-step program, and doing every single step right. And if she messed up on one, she was like, my kid is ruined, like this is it. I catastrophized the whole situation. And then she realized, a little bit later in life, that she was completely overemphasizing the program. And it was the program du jour, right? Because, for parenting, right, the programs change every, decade or so. So she was putting so much trust in the program and her own ability to control the situation. And she was minimizing God's ultimate control over the situation. And it was such an aha moment for her. Not that we should abdicate our responsibilities, but that we shouldn't obsess about this process either. It's not working harder or more consistently in the end. It's God who gives us victory over bad behaviors, our kids' bad behaviors. He changes hearts. He gives victory. It's freeing, really, when you think about that. Yes, we need to be useful tools. We need to do our best, but we're going to fall down. We need to understand our own human failings. So we need to pray. We need to pray for ourselves. We need to pray that we would have wisdom to parent, that God would refresh us. I've prayed for wisdom for so many years. I'm still praying for wisdom every day as a parent. It's so humbling. We need to pray that we keep our emotions in check. Then we need to pray for our kids. We need to pray that they would learn self-control, that they would respect authority. And when we do this, we need to remember that God loves our kids. He loves them, and he has chosen us as their parent, the perfect parent, not in that we are perfect, but we are the just right parent for our kids. That's pretty humbling to think that God picked you and said, you are the right parent. You should feel empowered that God is going to equip me to handle this spirited kid. He loves our kids. They're his kids. They are on loan to us for a short amount of time, and he loves them more than we do. That's pretty mind-blowing, right? When you think about that mama bear love that we have for our kids, and that God loves them more than that, and that he loves us with that same fervor, even when we are imperfect parents. And let me tell you, the longer you parent, the more you realize that you are an imperfect parent. But God is perfect, and he's referred to as a father. I love that when we think about parenting, that he is a loving father. And maybe you don't have that image in your mind. When you think about a father, you don't think about that. But maybe reflect on great fathers you've seen on TV, or a friend who had an amazing father, a father that was faithful, that did what he said he was going to do, that showed up, that listened, that cares, that protects. That's our Father. That's our Father God. Wow, that's the kind of God we have, that's ultimately in control over this, that will ultimately provide the outcome. Well, if you feel like, wow, I have blown this, these tips, man, this approach, this is completely different than what I've been doing. I have made a mess out of this. No problem. You can start today. It's never too late. Jump in. If your kids are older, start now. You can do what you will with where you are. Because motherhood is a marathon. It's not a sprint. And I think as a mom of young kids, you can think, well, I just have to get over this hurdle, and then, it will be smooth sailing. Sorry to break it to you. Moms that probably have kids that are 40, 50, 60 are probably nodding their head, so I need to hear that message myself. Parenting continues on and on and on. Here's a spoiler alert. Spirited children often grow up to be spirited young adults. Not always, but that has been my experience, so be prepared, right? We need to dive in where you are and start going at this. So what's my darling daughter up to? Well, she is a student at University of Washington, Seattle. She is a double major in biology and Scandinavian studies, again, doing it her own way. And she has a summer internship, which is amazing in this crazy COVID times. She loves her mom and dad. She calls us regularly. We see her all the time. Is it perfect? No. Am I trusting God for the outcome? 100%. Is she still a strong-willed girl? Oh, yeah. Mostly used for good. So I thought maybe you'd enjoy a recent picture of her, because the other one was a little older. It's kind of hard to see, but if you look closely, she's got pink hair. It's growing out a little bit, but it has been purple. It has been magenta. It has been black all this year. But she is a love. She's a blessing to us. And I hope that you have grown to appreciate today that spirited kids become exceptional adults. So take heart, and I hope I've encouraged you to see the blessings, to address the challenges, and to trust God for the outcome. Thanks so much.